Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to do a deep dive into a 2025 housing market forecast.
Yeah, this is from Realtor.com.
And you know what? They're predicting some pretty surprising hotspots.
Yeah, some unusual suspects in their list of the top 10 markets to watch.
Okay, so where do we start with all this?
Well, first, it looks like we're seeing a move away from those traditional, expensive coastal cities.
Interesting.
Yeah. Realtor.com is saying the South and the West are going to be the new hot areas.
Okay, so let's name these top 10 markets. What are we talking about?
All right, get ready for a mouthful because here we go. Colorado Springs, Colorado. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach, Florida. Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Newport News. Virginia, North Carolina.
Oh, wow. Okay, keep going.
El Paso, Texas. Richmond, Virginia. Orlando, Kissimmee, Sanford, Florida.
I'm writing all this down.
McAllen, Edinburgh, Mission, Texas. Phoenix, Mesa, Chandler, Arizona. Atlanta, Sandy Springs, Alpharetta, Georgia.
Got it.
And last but not least, Greensboro, High Point, North Carolina.
Wow, that is a mouthful. Did you notice anything? I'm seeing a theme here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Lots of sunshine and warm weather in that list.
Right. And like you said, not the usual big names.
Exactly. And typically, you would expect those areas to have lower home prices, right?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
But here's the catch. Lower home prices don't always mean that it's affordable to live there.
Right. You have to factor in the cost of living too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what we're seeing is while these places might have cheaper homes, incomes also tend to be lower in those areas.
So people are spending more of their income on just housing.
Yeah, Realtor.com found that buyers in those cities are actually spending a higher percentage of their income on housing. It's around 31.1%.
Oh, wow.
Compared to the national average, which is 29.2%.
That's a pretty big difference. So, even though houses themselves might be cheaper, it ends up being more expensive overall because everything else costs more too.
Exactly. It all boils down to how much you're spending each month on everything. Housing, groceries, all that stuff.
Okay, so are any of these top 10 markets actually, truly affordable?
Yeah, actually 7 of the top 10 cities do have a lower overall cost of living.
Ooh, okay.
The most affordable one is McAllen, Texas. Living costs there are a full 13% below the national average.
Wow. 13%. That's significant.
But on the flip side, Miami is the least affordable. They're spending a lot on housing there.
How much we're talking?
42.1% of their income is going toward housing.
Whoa, that's a huge chunk.
Yeah, and the overall cost of living there is over 11% higher than the national average.
Okay, so that reminds me of something we've been hearing a lot about. Remote work.
Uh-huh.
People thought, if we can work from anywhere, we can leave these expensive cities. Do you think that's what's happening here?
Oh, I think it's a big factor, yeah. I mean, if you can work from anywhere, you can choose a place with a lower cost of living.
Right, better weather, all that.
Yeah, and maybe a more relaxed lifestyle, too.
So are there actually enough remote jobs in these cities? Or is that just a dream?
The data shows that it's not just a dream. Half of the top 10 markets actually have a higher percentage of remote jobs than the national average.
Okay, so which cities are we talking?
We're looking at places like Richmond, Atlanta, Phoenix, Colorado Springs, Orlando. They're becoming hubs for remote workers.
That's interesting. So these cities are really adapting to this trend. But what about inventory? Are there even enough homes in these places?
That's been a big challenge nationwide, but the inventory is showing some signs of recovery, especially in the South and the West.
Okay, so does that mean it's a buyer's market now?
Not quite, no. While we're seeing more homes for sale, the recovery is uneven across the country.
So the South and West are recovering faster?
Yes, exactly. In November, the South saw a 30.8% increase in listings compared to last year.
Wow.
And the West was close behind at 29.2%. But the Midwest and Northeast are lagging behind.
So if you're looking for more options, the South and West are the places to go. Any specific cities seeing big inventory growth?
Yeah, San Diego, Miami, and Denver have all seen big increases in inventory.
So is this all new construction?
It's a mix. New construction is playing a role, but we're also seeing more people choosing to sell their existing homes, which adds to the inventory.
That's good news for buyers.
Yeah.
But it's not all about the houses, right? What about the people who are moving to these top 10 markets?
Yeah, you're right. It's about the communities that are forming. These areas tend to have a higher percentage of younger households, families with kids.
So they're attracting a diverse group of people.
Absolutely. And another trend we're seeing is a strong military connection. More than 1 in 7 households in these areas are either active duty military or veterans.
That makes sense with the military bases in some of these places. And you mentioned another trend.
Right, strong international ties. An average of 17.6% of residents in these markets are foreign-born.
So true melting pots, any cities that stand out.
Miami leads the way, with 42.7% of its residents being foreign-born.
Wow, that's impressive. So with so many military families, I guess government-backed mortgages are really important in these areas.
Yeah, you're spot on. Options like VA, FHA, and USDA loans are much more common in these markets. They help make homeownership more accessible.
Can you break that down a little?
Sure, these programs often need lower down payments, they have more flexible credit requirements.
So they help people who might not have a ton of money saved up.
Exactly. And they're really beneficial for military families, too.
Okay, so how common are these types of loans in those cities?
Well, more than half of recent mortgages in Colorado Springs, El Paso, and Virginia Beach were government loans.
Oh, wow.
For example, in El Paso, almost 75% of all mortgages were government loans.
So these programs are really helping people achieve homeownership. But what does all this mean for the rest of the country?
That is a great question, and one we'll explore more when we come back. So we've been talking about these 10 cities, becoming these real estate hotspots.
Right, right.
It's fascinating to think about how this might change things for the rest of the U.S., the whole housing landscape.
Yeah, how these trends might, spread to other places.
Exactly. Think about, migration patterns. People are moving to places that are more affordable.
Sure, and where there are jobs and where they want to live, right?
Exactly. And these 10 cities, they're offering all of that, so they're going to keep attracting more people.
Right. So maybe we'll see even more people moving to the South and the West.
Exactly. It's like a domino effect. And it's not just people, it's developers and investors, too.
Oh, right. Because they're going to follow the money, right?
Exactly. They want to build and buy in places that are growing.
So the more attention these cities get, the more they grow.
Yeah, it's a cycle, but it could have some downsides, too.
What do you mean?
Well, if things grow too fast, housing costs could go up even more.
Oh, right. That makes sense. And then the people who already live there might get priced out.
Exactly. That's that gentrification issue.
Right, right. So how do we make sure that growth is good for everyone?
That's a great question. I think we need smart planning, We need to find ways to grow without making things too expensive for the people who already live there.
Yeah. So it's not just about building more houses. It's about building communities.
Exactly. Places where everyone feels welcome.
I think that's so important, that sense of community. It's about more than just having a roof over your head, right?
You got it. It's about belonging, feeling connected to the place where you live.
Right. And I think that's something people are really looking for, especially now.
Yeah, it's so important. So it makes me wonder if in the future we'll even think about housing markets in the same way.
What do you mean?
Well, maybe it'll be less about location, and more about lifestyle, like what kind of community do you want to be a part of?
Interesting. So it's not just about the house itself, it's about the people around you.
Exactly. And we're already seeing that shift, I think. People are thinking about things like social connections, access to nature.
Yeah, they want to live in walkable neighborhoods, support local businesses.
Right. And I think that could really change the way we design and build communities in the future.
So instead of those big, sprawling suburbs, we might see more smaller, more close-knit neighborhoods.
Exactly. And that's a really exciting possibility, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's like we're rediscovering the importance of community.
I think so. It's about creating spaces where people can connect, support each other.
Right. And it makes me think about all the choices we have to make.
Yeah, absolutely. The decisions we make now will shape the future of our communities.
Well, we've come a long way from just talking about those 10 cities. We're thinking about the future of communities now.
We are. And it shows how everything is connected,
Right.
Housing, people, the economy.
It's a lot to think about. But it's also important to remember that we don't know everything about the future.
That's true. We can make predictions, but there are always surprises.
So for our listeners who want to learn more about those 10 housing markets,
yeah, check out the full forecast from Realtor.com.
it's a great resource if you're thinking about making a move.
Or if you just want to learn more about what the future of housing might look like.
Right. And who knows? Maybe it'll give you some ideas for how to make your own community better.
That's a great point. Creating strong communities is something we can all work on.
So before we move on, I'd love to hear what stood out to you most from our conversation so far.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is realizing how interconnected everything is.
Yeah, I agree. Like everything we've talked about, it's all linked together.
Exactly. And that's what makes this topic so interesting. We're always learning new things.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap up this episode by talking about one more thing. We've talked a lot about the numbers, the trends, the economic side of things,
Uh-huh.
but we haven't really talked about how all this affects people on an emotional level.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah.
So that's what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive, the psychological impact of all these changes. Okay, so let's get into this idea of the psychology of the housing market, how all these trends are affecting people, like emotionally.
Right, right. It's a big deal, actually.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. For a long time, owning a home has been a huge part of the American dream.
Yeah, it's like you buy a house, you settle down, you start a family, the whole 9 yards.
Exactly. It's stability. It's success. But what if that dream just keeps getting harder and harder to achieve?
Yeah, what happens then? I mean, especially for younger people today, there's student loan debt, jobs are hard to find, everything's expensive.
Right. So it's like they're being told to do all these things, but it's just not realistic for a lot of them.
And that must feel pretty discouraging.
It does. And it can create a lot of stress and anxiety, feeling like you're not where you're supposed to be.
So how do we change that? I mean, if owning a home is becoming less and less attainable, how do we define success differently?
That's the million-dollar question, right, though? I think it starts with a recognizing that there are other ways to live a good life.
Okay, so what do you mean by that?
Well, maybe it's not all about earning a house. Maybe it's about focusing on experiences, on building relationships, on finding purpose in other ways.
So it's like shifting our priorities.
Exactly, and creating communities where people feel connected and supported regardless of whether they own a home or not.
Yeah, I like that. It's about belonging, not just owning.
Right. And it's about recognizing that everyone has different needs and different paths in life.
So maybe we need to start thinking about home in a broader sense, not just as a building, but as a feeling, a sense of belonging.
Absolutely. And that opens up so many possibilities for how we create communities in the future.
Like imagine communities that are designed for connection
Right. Places where people can interact, share resources, support each other.
and where everyone feels like they belong, no matter who they are or what their background is.
Exactly. That's the kind of future I'd like to see.
Me too. And I think it's something we can all work towards, even in small ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with recognizing that we're all in this together.
Well, wow. We've covered a lot of ground today, from 10 specific cities to the future of communities.
It's been quite a journey.
And I think the biggest takeaway for me is that sense of hope. Even with all the challenges, we can create a better future.
I agree. It's about recognizing our power to shape the world around us.
And I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It has been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We hope you learned something new today.
And maybe even got inspired to think about housing and community in a new way.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with your friends.
And join us next time for another deep dive into a topic that's shaping our world.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those conversations going.